Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan, and yeah, we have actually some pretty interesting news for Warhammer the Old World. I was actually quite surprised about this, because this news was only available through Eventbrite. I don't know if you guys go to a lot of Games Workshop events, but this is what they use so you can buy tickets. And yeah, the first Warhammer the Old World event was announced. A matched play event, which is actually quite surprising, as I wasn't expecting matched play stuff for a while. So the basic details around the event is this is happening in April. You'll need a 1,500 point army, and you'll be playing a total of 5 games throughout that weekend, which is pretty good. I'm actually quite keen on this. 1,500 points is enough because, well, the edition just launched now, so people are getting their armies rebased or painted up. So yeah, this is all normal and standard. Same thing when we start going into the mastering an army and painting. So again, you can only pick the armies available in Ravening Hordes or Forces of Fantasy, which gives you 9 choices so far. In the future, we'll have Cafe and Kislev, which will kind of add in some extra flavor. And again, 1,500 points, which is a pretty good start. But things get a little bit more interesting with the reintroduction of the rule of 3. This is something that needs to be explained just in case you've never played the tabletop before and you're just getting into it now. So, number of units. As described on page 278 of the Warhammer the Old World rulebook, the number of some of the available units is restricted. In match play events, there is an additional limit of 0 to 3 applied to any units that are not otherwise restricted by the army composition list that you're using. For example, if you're fielding an Empire of Man army using the Grand Army composition list, you can only include 0 to 1 veteran state troops per 1,000 points, but you can field as many units of Free Company Militia as you wish. When writing your muster list for a match play event, you can only include 0 to 3 units of Free Company Militia. The limit on the veteran state troops remains unaffected. So, this might not sound like a big thing, but it actually is, because, well, this should have been in the core rulebook anyway. And I imagine that a lot of people will be using that for events, and not even that, but friendly games too. Why is that, you may ask? Well, without the restriction, things can get a little bit broken. So the first thing that the Warhammer community has been doing since they got access to their books is, well, trying to break stuff. And this is the perfect example. I don't know if you've seen this floating around the Reddit, the Facebook groups, Twitter, pretty much any place that people can voice an opinion. But yeah, this is a legal army. There's a lot of gyrocopters and gyro bombers, and yeah, it's £600 worth of gyrocopters. But if you've been playing Warhammer Tabletop for a decent amount of time, you'll know that there's always that dude that's going to be doing this, unfortunately. Yeah, it's that guy. This isn't the only list. I've seen some pretty memey Chaos armies, which is the smallest army I've ever seen for Chaos Warriors. There's also just a ridiculous amount of other things for like the Wood Elves, for the High Elves. Hell, even the Legacy lists also, even though they're not going to be allowed in match play events, this is good stuff to take into your proper games in the future. Just your friendly games at your local club or at your home, your friend's home, all that type of stuff. Now, these restrictions were going to happen eventually by the community, let's be honest there, but it's nice that Games Workshop have taken this into mind, because I honestly was believing that we were just not going to get any match play events and it was just going to be more narrative focused and people were just going to meme the living hell out of this. Meme lists can be cool, don't get me wrong, but only if both parties are, well, willing to play this, right? The player's obviously going to want to do this, but the person receiving such a crazy amount of shots and just not being able to pin down the gyrocopters, that's going to be an army that you're basically not going to be able to hit if the enemy player knows what they're doing. Now let's continue here because I'm actually pleasantly surprised. When mustering your force, please use the most up-to-date rules found in the Ravening Hordes and Forces of Fantasy publications and any arcane journals, FAQs, errata, and beta rules found via www.warhammercommunity/FAQs. Simple enough. This is where things get a little bit more curious. You can use either the Grand Army composition list for your chosen faction, or you can use an Army of Infamy list from your faction's Arcane Journal. I actually was not expecting that you'd be able to use an army list from the Arcane Journals. They all looked a bit too fluffy for me, but for match play, I didn't know if that was going to be possible. Well, the Mortuary Cult seems fine. In all honesty, it seems pretty damn good. and the 2 Bretonnian ones seem alright. I wasn't too sure with the Royal Host thing, but then again I haven't been able to play around with that just yet. But this is quite exciting because it seems that Games Workshop are writing the Arcane Journals in mind, the army list at least, with some match play ideas. The item stuff was always going to be expected, and it's quite good because the items there are pretty damn tasty. But there are 9 factions in terms of core which are going to get their Arcane Journals, 2 already out, and we've already seen the announcement for the Greenskins, which is going to have, I believe it was called the Nomad Tribes and the Troll Hordes. The reason why this is good is because that means events will be extremely varied. That means if you see multiple Tomb King players, Bretonnian players, Greenskin players, or whatever the other ones are for the other factions, yeah, you might actually see 3 completely different types of Tomb King armies, rather than everything being very much the same, because we know that when it comes to events, most people will be taking the same thing. If you go to a Warhammer 40k tournament, or at least that was more during 9th edition, there'd be a lot of Space Marine armies, and a lot of them would be kind of similar. So it's nice to see that the variety is going to be there for different army list composition because of the different rosters. If we continue just a little bit, mercenaries can be used at the event, which, I mean, yeah, you could make something pretty interesting with that, but no allied contingents. And yeah, you can use named characters from the Arcane Journals, which is cool because if I believe Prince Apophis actually has some pretty decent rules. I actually got him painted up a while back. I had a Finecast version of him, and I was going to use him as a Tomb Prince. Lo and behold, he ended up as a playable character, which is great. Ultimately, I think that casual players should get used to the whole system of a rule of 3. If you're not used to this because you've never played tabletop before, don't worry, it actually just makes things a bit more balanced. Naturally, this doesn't solve every problem with Warhammer the Old World, but it does solve a major one because spamming units can be stupid ridiculous. Where even some core options, if used in a very optimal way, could be very, very strong. I'm looking at you, Knights of the Realm. Again, pleasantly surprised by this because I honestly thought Games Workshop were just going to go, here are the rules, play events, we'll host events too, but they weren't going to look at big issues like this. So, yeah, I'm happy to be proven wrong about this. This is really, really good. I imagine some more balance and some different types of restrictions will come into play when we start to see more events happen, and Games Workshop have been able to focus test this at events at Warhammer World or other areas just to see what are people bringing, what are people using, what's getting used too much, what's abusing the system, It's a slow process. And don't get me wrong, yes, we are aware that they've tested stuff prior, but this can be counted as a first edition in a sense, and yeah, there's always going to be teething problems when it comes to a first edition. I mean, at least it wasn't as bad as Age of Sigmar first edition when nothing had points, because that's a weird thing to do. But yeah, this has actually made me a lot more optimistic for Warhammer the Old World. I already was, but there was the worry that this was just going to be a narrative-only thing, and there wasn't going to be competitive play. Like, yes, again, independents would do that anyway, but if we want proper support from Games Workshop, they need to do this too. We can't let the independent tournament organizers do everything, or else Games Workshop are going to get lazy, aren't they? It's something that happens with a lot of different companies, so this is kind of cool. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let's start a bit of a discussion. I'm almost done editing the first battle report. It's basically going to be episode 0, and yeah, we'll go from there. Have a great day, guys, and I'll see you all again very, very soon.